In this video, I want to show how to build a slide-in animation effect in React 18. What I'm referring to is something like this. All right, let's get to it. So we'll be using Create React App. Really, the only thing we need is Node installed. Okay, great. And let's do Create React App, call it slide-in. And I'm gonna pause while this finishes. Okay, so that finished loading. And now we're gonna go into the slide-in directory. So slide-in. I'm gonna open up the editor. And let's go ahead and start the server. All right, so we should have something like this. The page that Create React App creates for us. If we look at the package JSON, you could see that I am indeed using React 18. All right, so step one, let's go into the app.js and remove most of the stuff. I'm gonna take out the header that has this spinning image and these directions here. Just leave the app class. So now the first thing we need to do is we need to build what we're gonna animate. So let's go ahead and create a box component. So first we're gonna create a components folder here, and then box folder, and then a box component. So this would just be a regular component. Be a simple div, and let's have the ability to pass in some text to display. And let's go ahead and give this thing a class name as well. Call it box. And the last thing we need to do is we need to export the component like so. And let's go ahead and create a CSS file as well to give those styles. And maybe this will have flex. And let's just try to center it a little bit. So align items, center as well. And then let's give it a width of 300 and height of maybe 200. And give it a border of 1 pixel solid black. Okay, that looks pretty good. We're gonna import those styles into the component. And then go back into the app component and see if we could see our box. Text. And then let's maybe say hello slide-in. Just need to import our box. So I'm missing a. Okay, so we see our box. Now the box is not centered, so let's go into the app CSS and maybe fix that. So display flex in here as well, and do a justify content of center. Okay, that looks good. So the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna create a component that allows you to put the box in there and to slide the box up and down. I guess in our case, really down to slide it in. So let's call it slide in. And we'll have a slide in.js. And I know I'm going to have a CSS file, so let's just create that as well. Slide in.css. So slide in.js will just be a component. And I'm going to be wrapping the box. So the box is going to be my child. So I'm going to have a children property here. And this will also be a div. So, and then let's have a class of class name of slide in. So, and it will have children inside of it. And let's go ahead and export this component as well. So export default slide in. And let's import the slide in.css, which I'm going to have in a second. Okay, for slide in CSS, let's give it a class of slide in. And this will just have a background of, let's say, red and color of white. So we have a slide in that imports our styles. Let's go into the app.js and actually put the slide in here. So you could see now that the slide in component is surrounding the box. So now the question is, how do we move this box up and down? That's a question that we have to ask even before the whole point of animations. How do we animate it? How do we just move it around up and down? So there's this property called margin top. So if we go back to the sliding.css, you could see that margin top, if we specify it of, let's say, 100 pixels, it's actually a margin top of a dash, like so. You could see that the box moves. And what margin top is, it's a property that specifies the top margin on top of a box. So if it's a positive margin, it pushes the box down. And if it's a negative margin, let's say maybe negative 250, it pushes the box all the way up. That's just how the property works, margin top property. So we see that that could be our starting point. Specify margin top of negative 250 and push it all the way up. So what if we start with a negative margin top, like so, and then go back to the app and specify as a state of, let's say, start animation. And then set start animation, use state, so it will be false in the beginning, so we're not animating right in the beginning of it, and then have a button. And actually let's not have a button inside the app class, but have it like as a sibling of app class. Have a button that says toggle, maybe toggle animation. And this will have an on-click event that will toggle the start animation on and off. So set start animation to whatever the value used to be, flip that. So like that, start animation, oops, like so. And then what we could do is we could have a property inside the slide in component. Maybe we could also call it start animation. Start animation. And it will depend, it will be tied to the start animation over here based on this button that you're clicking. And then inside the component, besides the children property, we'll also have a start animation property. And then let's call it the transition properties. And we'll say that if start animation is true, then we'll define margin top to be positive, let's say 5 pixels, and like so. Otherwise, it will be an empty list of properties. And we could have that as our style on the element. So our transition properties will go in here. And this should give us the animation, or at least the movement, right? We're able to move the box from off screen to on screen. But it looks kind of rough and there's no real animation happening here. It just moves it in real quickly without a nice subtle animation effect. So the way that's done is we could specify a transition property of margin top, and then a transition duration of, let's say, 2 seconds. And basically what this says is that there's going to be this property margin top, and it's going to change. Right now it's negative 250, but it could change based on some value. And when it does change, don't change it right away, but let's take 2 seconds to change it. So let's see how that works. So when you click on it, it slides it in as opposed to just, quickly displaying it. And the same thing when we toggle it off, it moves off a screen. Now to make this a little even nicer, we could specify opacity property of 0. And basically what this says is that in the beginning, do not display for opacity. 0 means that you can't see anything, you can't see the element. And we're going to include the property in the list of transition properties. And then back in our slide in component, we're going to also include the opacity property as the other property and set it to 1. And basically the idea here is that if animation is true, then take whatever the margin, the existing margin top is, which is negative 250, and the opacity, which is 0, take the opacity to 1 and take a margin top to 5 pixels. Let's see how this works. So you could see that not only does it slide it in, but it also changes the opacity from 0 to 1. And of course you could play around with values. It doesn't have to be 2 seconds, it could be 1 second. Let's see how that works. So it's not as subtle, it takes a little quicker, it happens a little quicker, but maybe that's what you want. In my next video, what I want to show is I want to show the same thing I just did with just regular transition property and transition duration, the typical CSS properties. I want something similar, like this effect, to be done using React Spring library, which is the library that's meant for animations in React. if you want to see that, and if you enjoyed this video in general, make sure to click the subscribe button, and I'll see you next time.